In Baldur's Gate 3, there are many facets that you can consider when creating your character, and the majority of these details can be changed at the magic mirror in your camp or by giving a mere pittance of coin to withers. However, one thing you can't change as you play through the game is what race you picked in Character Select. This means, unlike your class, you'll have to start all over from the very beginning of the game if you want to change what race you're playing as. So allow me to help you cure your choice paralysis with all the different options you have in Character Select by ruling a few of them out for you. How yin's doing? I'm an Ian, and this is my top 10 worst races to play in Baldur's Gate 3. Let's get into it.
Enough! How dare you mock me in such a manner?
Well, how would you like me to mock you then? I take requests.
Just barely making it onto the list here, we have the half-elf high elves. Now before you start going into the comments complaining about how I shouldn't have put them here, allow me to explain myself. First of all, the way I decided to organize sub-races in this game meant that there were less than 20 races to choose from. This means for those of you who saw my top 10 best races for Baldur's Gate 3, you're going to notice a little bit of overlap in the first few entries here. Secondly, due to comments I have received in previous videos, I'll be considering multi-classing far more heavily than I did in the previous top 10s I've done for this game. This means weapon and armor proficiencies will be valued far less than they were in my initial top 10 best race video. After all, if you want to have good weapon and armor proficiencies on a class that normally doesn't have them, you can easily just take a one-level dip into War Domain Cleric and have all the proficiencies you could possibly want in regards to weapons and armor, as well as some basic Cleric spellcasting to boot. And yes, there are other multi-class options you can choose aside from that, but we're here to talk about which races are the worst, not what multi-class options are the best. And since multi-classing makes weapon proficiencies effectively worthless and armor proficiencies barely useful, this results in half-elves being ultimately inferior to their purebred counterparts. And among them, in my opinion, the high elves are the worst of the three. The Drow get a plethora of unique dialogue options that help spice up your gameplay, while the Wood Elves give you some enhanced mobility while in combat. Meanwhile, the unique feature of High Elves is the fact you get to pick a cantrip from the wizard's spell list at game start. Don't get me wrong, this is a great ability, and the Fey ancestry that all elves, half and purebred, get is an amazing ability as well. This means the half-elf high elf is actually a pretty decent race choice for those of you who want to play a wizard or sorcerer but also don't want to multi-class in order to get weapon and armor proficiencies. Additionally, there's tons of niche scenarios where with specific cantrips you can come up with some interesting builds. So I wouldn't say they're bad by any stretch of the imagination, it's just a matter of them being outclassed by everything not on this list. And to be perfectly honest with Yins, that's kind of the recurring theme, especially for the first half of this list. The race is not truly bad, you're just being outclassed by all of your other options.
We'll do anything! Just give us the gear!
Sorry, I don't make deals with bitches.
Taking the 9th spot on our search for the worst, we got rock gnomes. The gnomish cunning power is one of the most powerful abilities in the entire game, giving you advantage on saving throws if they involve intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. The problem, however, is this is the only universal pro to the gnome subraces. Since gnomes are considered a shorty race, this means they effectively have a mobility penalty when in combat. This is because the per-turn movement you get from the shorty races of gnomes, dwarves, and halflings is reduced compared to the other races. And while yes, gnomish cunning is better than most other racial abilities you get from the other races you can pick in this game, it's not better than all the other abilities you get from picking a different race. For example, gnomish cunning is better than the Fey ancestry ability that elves get, but it's not better than Fey ancestry plus a longbow proficiency plus a boost to your perception. And while yes, gnomes do get dark vision, that's such a prolific thing among basically every playable race in this game that not having it's more of a con than having it being a pro. This means in order to avoid getting set on this list, a gnomish subrace would need to have some sort of unique subrace ability that's just as good as the gnomish cunning ability they get for just being a gnome, and the rock gnomes come horribly short of this. You see, the unique feature to rock gnomes is an ability called Artificer Lore. This is an interesting ability that gives you a significant boost to your history checks. This is an okay skill bonus, but it's not enough to get you off this list. History checks are far from the most useful skill in the entire game, and even when they do come up, you often have other skills that can be equally viable as an alternate route. So while rock gnomes can be situationally good for some niche builds, for example if you're trying to get insanely high history check skills, this can be a great race to pick. But realistically for most players, the rock gnomes are just a bad option. Not the worst, but far from the best. At number 8, we have the Gold Dwarves. The weapon proficiencies all dwarves get are effectively worthless in my eyes, since realistically, if you're going to use hammers or axes, you probably picked a class that can already use them innately. All dwarves also have the Dwarvish Resilience trait. This makes it so that all dwarves will take half damage from poison and have an advantage against being poisoned. However, just like the previously mentioned rock gnomes, dwarves have a movement penalty while in combat, which hurts their ranking severely, causing them to get higher on this list, especially once you realize all the other methods you have to acquire poison resistance aside from picking a dwarf. For instance, if you just want to take half damage from poison damage, you could easily take a 1-level dip in Ranger to achieve a similar effect while gaining some bonus proficiencies. Or you could get one of the NPCs you can hire through Withers to cast the protection from poison spell on you every long rest. Sure, that's a little more tedious than just picking a dwarf, but you get the same resistance all the same. As for gold dwarves specifically, gold dwarves have one singular ability that sets them apart from the other dwarvish subraces. You see, gold dwarves get 1 extra HP per level up. And with Baldur's Gate 3's level cap being set to 12, this means at most you'll have 12 extra HP by the end of the game. For some perspective, the damage you do with a Great Axe, that non-magical weapon that all barbarians start in their inventory and have equipped, does 1d12 damage. This means the Great Axe will do 1 to 12 damage when it hits someone, not counting their strength modifier. This means that 12 extra HP you get by the end of the game is a lot less important than you might think. Sure, it might save you in those scenarios where you survive with just 1 HP every now and then, making this ability better than nothing, but if you really want to be as durable as possible in this game, pick a half-orc and you'll be able to survive with 1 HP regardless of what the damage numbers were.
Why is this mountain so freaking cold?
Maybe because it's a mountain? God, I hate escort missions.
And why aren't you cold, smartass?
Well, you see, I equipped this great new mountaineering item called pants.
Taking the number 7 spot on this list, we got Shield Dwarves. Shield Dwarves are identical to the Gold Dwarves, except for one key detail. Instead of getting more HP as you level up, these guys give you medium and light armor proficiency. Medium and light armor proficiency on any class is great, but you know what else gives you that? Multiclassing? No, seriously, just take a 1-level dip into any class that gives you these armor proficiencies, and not only will you have those proficiencies, but you'll also have a bunch of other cool stuff to work with as well. And if you're worried about losing access to 6th-level spells as a spellcasting class, don't worry about it. You get access to 6th-level spells at level 11, so as long as you only take a 1-level dip in a class, you'll still have access to 6th-level spells by the end of the game. Still, being able to get medium armor proficiency at level 1 without needing to pick a class that has access to it is still really good. Additionally, the abilities all dwarves get innately are rock solid, meaning while shield dwarves are unquestionably the worst dwarven subrace, they're still dwarves, and therefore too good to be considered worthy of the top 5 worst races in this game. Coming in at number 6, we got the Forest Gnomes. Gnomish cunning, while powerful enough to ensure they don't end up in the top 5 of this list, is not enough to ensure they don't end up on the list entirely. There is only one thing that sets the Forest Gnomes apart from the previously mentioned Rock Gnomes. That being, instead of getting a massive boost to their history checks, the Forest Gnomes instead get the ability to cast Speak with Animals. Now, Speak with Animals is actually quite a good spell. In fact, the spell is so good that the developers decided to make sure that you had access to a wide array of means to acquire this spell. For instance, if you picked a Bard, Druid, or Nature Domain Cleric, you'll have access to this spell at level 1, even if you did not pick the Forest Gnome as your subrace. Rangers will be able to select this spell once they reach level 2, whilst Oath of the Ancient Paladins and Wildheart Barbarians will be able to get you access to this spell at level 3. Additionally, those of you who are willing to wait till midway through the game, Knowledge Domain Clerics will have access to this spell at level 6. Additionally, one of the evocations that Warlocks can select as they level up give you access to this spell just as well. Moreover, you don't have just 1, not 2, but 3 different feats you can select as you level up to get this spell as well. Or instead of doing any of that, you could just stockpile potions of Speak with Animals instead. This means, realistically speaking, while the Forest Gnomes do have a use case scenario, it is one that is made utterly redundant by a lot of different build choices you might be making. In fact, if it weren't for the Gnomish Cunning ability being so amazing, I quite frankly would put these guys somewhere in the top 5, hands down. Taking the halfway spot on this list at number 5, we got the Zariel tieflings. All tieflings give you an innate resistance to fire damage, which is nice, but it's nothing compared to some of the other resistances other races give you, such as the dwarves' dwarvish resilience, or the elves' fey ancestry. So aside from some unique dialogue and a fire resistance, what else do tieflings give you as the player? Well, you'll get 3 different spells depending on what subrace you picked. At level 3, you'll gain access to a first level spell that you can cast once per long rest, and at level 5, you'll gain a level 2 spell that you can cast once per long rest. Please keep in mind, however, that these spells will be scaling based on your charisma modifier, not whatever class you picked. So if you are a wizard who scales their spells off of intelligence and chose a tiefling, the tiefling racial spells you'll be gaining access to will be scaling based on your charisma stat, not your intelligence. As for what spells you get from the Zariel tiefling specifically, at the start of the game you'll have access to the Thaumaturgy cantrip. This will allow you to have advantage on intimidation checks. While this cantrip is inferior to the Friends cantrip in my opinion, not every class in the game will give you access to the Friends cantrip, and it's not really worth multi-classing just to gain access to. Once you've reached level 3 as a Zariel tiefling, you'll gain access to the Searing Smite spell. This is a concentration spell from the Paladin spell list. It's a melee range spell that, after hitting your target with, allows you to maintain concentration in order to maintain a damage over time effect on your target. The only problem with this spell is the fact that it's a melee range spell that requires you to maintain concentration to get the full effect of. This means realistically, you're going to hit a target with this spell, have them take a little bit of damage, have them immediately attack you on their next turn, and then have a good chance of you losing concentration, effectively nullifying the benefits of this spell entirely. At level 5, you'll gain access to Branding Smite. This is better than Searing Smite in the sense that it doesn't require you to have concentration whatsoever, but it really just adds some radiant damage to your next attack roll. Interestingly, unlike Searing Smite, you don't have to use this exclusively on melee attacks. It can also be used on ranged attacks, so if you're using a bow and arrow, it can also be applied to that. Overall, I'd say Zariel tieflings can best be described as a discount half-orc, in that they have abilities that are best suited to those of you who want to play a melee-oriented character, but are flexible enough they can realistically be viable on just about any class combination you want to play. The problem here, however, is that the spells you get from a Zariel tiefling are often going to be outclassed by the other abilities and items you'll be finding along your journey through the game. This means once you're past the early levels of the game, you're realistically only going to be making use out of the Thaumaturgy cantrip and the fire resistance if any of the racial abilities come up at all. Moving on to the 4th worst race in the game, we got the Asmodeus tiefling. As previously mentioned, the only difference between the different tiefling subraces is what spells they get as they level up. The cantrip you start the game with when you select this race is the Produce Flame spell. In terms of combat, this is just a worse version of the Firebolt spell. However, since you can keep the flame on hand as a light source, it does have one additional use that the Firebolt spell lacks. That being, it can protect you from the Shadow Curse in Act 2. There's also a few niche scenarios where having a light source and not relying on dark vision can be advantageous. However, these situations are extremely few and far between. At level 3, you'll be able to cast the spell Hellish Rebuke once per long rest. This is a reaction spell that you can cast on people when they attack you. This means Asmodeus tieflings can smite opponents with literal hellfire if the opponent attacked them that turn. And at 5th level, they gain access to the Darkness spell. Players who are better at this game than I have found some unique exploits with this spell involving stealth shenanigans, but personally I find myself using this spell exclusively to steal stuff without alerting the guards, because guards will only hold you accountable for theft if they see you commit said theft. Does not matter if you made an incredibly obvious smokescreen before stealing said item, as long as they didn't see you pick it up, it doesn't count. Depending on what you're trying to build and personal preference, one could make a decent argument that the Asmodeus tieflings are superior to the Zariel tieflings, but personally, I'd say no. I have played tieflings quite extensively in this game, in fact they're probably my most played race in the entire game. And quite frankly, when I play an Asmodeus tiefling, I find myself not using the spells after Act 2 altogether, while Zariel tieflings have some spells that I can at least get some mileage out of after that point. Taking the bronze medal on this list, we have the basic bitch himself, humanity. Humans have the same weapon and armor proficiencies half-elves get, but instead of having dark vision or the amazing fey ancestry of the elves, you get the human versatility ability. This means humans get a bonus proficiency at the start of the game, as well as a boost to their maximum weight limit when it comes to inventory management. This makes humans ideal for those of you who want to play a solo run since you'll have more inventory space to work with. But if you're not doing that, this ability is not very useful since realistically you will have a party of 4 characters to work with, meaning you have 4 different characters' inventory spaces to hold all the random crap you want. In tabletop, where you only get to control 1 character at any given time, the jack-of-all-trades nature of humans can be really, really good. But in a game where you get 4 characters to control at any given time, the benefits of being a human are sharply diminished. Receiving the Silver Medal of Shame, we have the Blue Bastards themselves, the Mephistopheles tiefling. Fire resistance is good, but by itself I find it inferior to the combined abilities of humanity. And in my personal opinion, these guys have the worst racial spells in the entire game. At the start, you have what in my opinion is the most overrated cantrip in the entire game, Mage Hand. Mage Hand can be situationally good, but I find the scenarios where it can really shine are it's usually outclassed by other options. Yes, I can pull that switch from a distance by casting Mage Hand and having the hand fly over to pull the lever for me, or I could just shoot at it with Firebolt, or an arrow, or anything else really. Plus, if Mage Hand as a racial ability is that good in your opinion, you should probably be picking Githyanki instead since they get an improved version of this spell, which is innately invisible when you first cast it. And the spells this guy gets as they level up are subsequently even worse than Mage Hand in my opinion. Starting at 3rd level, you'll gain access to the Burning Hand spell. With this spell, your character will put their hands together and shoot fire out like a flamethrower. Individuals hit by this spell will have to make a dexterity save based on your charisma modifier, and if they fail, they take the full brunt of this spell's damage, which, since this is a racial spell that can't be upcasted, will always be 3d6 damage. If they succeed the saving throw, they'll take half the damage you rolled. If you have a decent charisma score and are playing a melee-oriented character, this spell can be pretty good. But realistically, paladins will be getting much better spells as they level up, making this spell something that will get outshined rather quickly in the game. And the spell you get at 5th level, in my opinion, is probably the worst racial spell in the entire game, being Flameblade. How the spell works is actually pretty easy to understand. You conjure a sword made of pure magical fire and wield it like a regular sword for some decent damage. The problem is, by the time you reach level 5 and can cast this spell, you have undoubtedly found a better weapon to simply wield in your hand. Thankfully, you cast this spell as a bonus action, so it does have some very niche scenarios where it can be used, such as if you're disarmed and need to attack but don't have time to pick up your weapon and use your action to re-equip it. But quite frankly, the spells here are so situationally useful that quite frankly, they might as well not be there. Now, if we were talking about racial abilities I'd want to have in real life, these guys would easily be cream of the crop, but in this video game, they are simply outclassed by more combat-oriented racials. But on the subject of being outclassed by other options, let's move on to our number 1 pick. Yeah, let's not beat around the bush here. I think most of you saw this coming from a mile away. The worst race to play in this game by a wide margin is the Dragonborn. The Dragonborn come in a fun array of 10 different sub-races. These sub-races will decide how your breath attack works exactly. Some of these sub-races will have you shoot your element out of your mouth in the shape of a cone, while others will have your chosen element spew out in a straight line. However, the damage on this ability is so abysmal that realistically you're going to have a hard time finding good use case scenarios for this ability once you're past level 4. Dragonborn also get an elemental resistance. This resistance directly correlates to whatever your breath attack does in damage. So if you have a fire breath, you get fire resistance, if you have a poison breath, you get poison resistance, and so on and so forth. You can't have scenarios where your breath attack and your elemental resistance don't overlap, so don't go thinking you can have poison resistance and a fire breath attack. That's not how this works. And if all of this sounds pretty underwhelming to you, well, that's because it is. While Dragonborn do get some unique racial dialogue as well, it's really nothing compared to many of the other playable races in this game, especially the ones that fail to make it on this list, like the Drow. But if for whatever reason you're still insistent on playing this race all the same, I do have a top 10 sub-race video for this race, so if you're trying to figure out what element you want to choose, I got you covered there. But honestly, from a min-maxing perspective, you should never be playing the Dragonborn. You should only realistically be playing a Dragonborn if you want to look cool and don't care about the stats whatsoever. And if that's the case, respect. But if that's the case, why are you watching a video like this? No, seriously, I'm genuinely curious. Please comment down below, I want to know. But with that said, I think it's time we wrap things up here. Be sure to comment what you think down below. If someone can change my mind, I'll be sure to pin them in the comments. Don't forget to leave a like as well. After all, you watched this video all the way to the end, so surely you liked it, didn't you? And thank you all so much for helping me reach 5,000 subscribers. If you're not already subscribed, maybe consider doing so. Or don't do that, I'm not your mother, I can't make you do stuff. With that said, I've been Ian, you have been you. Thank you all so much for watching.